Revelation chapter 17, the New Revised Standard Version. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great war, who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and with the wine of whose fornication the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk." So he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her fornication. And on her forehead was written a name, a mystery: Babylon the Great, mother of wars and of earth's abominations. And I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the witnesses to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly amazed. But the angel said to me, "Why are you so amazed? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to ascend from the bottomless pit and go to destruction, and the inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will be amazed when they see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come." This calls for a mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Also, they are 7 kings, of whom 5 have fallen. One is living, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast, that was and is not, it is an eighth, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour. They are to receive authority for 1 hour together with the beast. These are united in yielding their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he said to me, "The waters that you saw where the war is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the war. They will make their desolate and naked. They will devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by agreeing to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God will be fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, here's an outline of Revelation chapter 17. And in Revelation chapter 17, which goes up to chapter 19 and verse 10, there is a prophetic vision of history. The prophetic vision of history. In verses 1 and 2 of chapter 17, there is an overall introduction. First, the beast and the harlot in verses 3 through 18. Then there is a vision of the beast and the harlot, the explanation of the vision in verses 8 through 18. Then in the second section, there is judgment upon the great Babylon, that is the harlot, and that will be in chapter 18. In chapter 19, we will see a liturgy of final victory, or a worship event of final victory. So let us look at an interpretation of the general introduction, which we see in chapter 17, verses 1 and 2. We must note that chapter 17, verse 1 is parallel to chapter 21 and verse 9. The great harlot is Rome. In chapter 17 and verse 1, the angel shows John the judgment of the great harlot. And in chapter 21 and verse 9, he is shown, the angel shows him the bride, the wife of the Lamb, the New Jerusalem. So what is happening there? There are two women which are judged. One woman is evil and one is good. The evil woman is representing Rome, the evil empire, and the good woman is representing the New Jerusalem, the church. In chapter 17 and verse 3, is parallel to chapter 21 and verse 10. The angel takes John to the wilderness to see the woman seated on the beast, while in chapter 21 and verse 10, he is carried away to a high mountain and shown the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven. Next, we can see prostitution, which is symbolizing idolatry. So the language of prostitution here is not about necessarily sexual sin. It is talking about idolatry. Rome is personified as a woman and as a harlot, and the kings of the earth sell themselves as objects to the city of Rome. Rome has become a goddess as a result of its money and power. And if you remember well from the drama of the story, out from chapter 6, 7 onwards, we have been talking about the conflict and oppression from the Roman Empire. So we see the culmination of it happening here in chapters 17 through 19. In Revelation chapter 17 and verses 3 through 18, there is a vision of the beast and the harlot in verses 3 through 7. The desert here is a symbol of desolation, a place where the demons and savage beasts dwell. Rome is the mother of all harlots, the source and prototype of the idolatry that dominates the empire. The personification of Rome as a woman and a harlot is an image from the Old Testament. And we can see such image in Isaiah chapter 23 and verse 17, and Nahum chapter 3 and verses 1 through 4. Rome is presented as a woman seated on the beast and drinking from a gold cup. The woman draws life from the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus. Remember, the martyrs are those faithful ones who die for Jesus. They were faithful until death. Rome lives off the blood of its victims, that is, the martyrs, the blood of those who resisted the beast, those who do not adore the image of the beast and bear the mark of its name. Purple is the color of royalty. Remember, the harlot is dressed in scarlet. But on the other hand, purple is the color of royalty and sovereignty, and scarlet is the color of the beast. So we will now look at verses 8 through 18 of chapter 17, which will now be given an explanation of the vision which we just spoke about. So here is the explanation of the vision, which is now given in verses 8 through 18. The power of the beast is examined in verses 8 through 11. These verses speak of three moments. The first exists once but does not exist now. And that's in verse 8. The second is the beast's parousia. So the second is the beast's parousia. And parousia here is speaking of coming, expected coming. So this fancy word in context means the beast. The second is the beast coming. Normally, we would refer to parousia when talking of Jesus' second return, but parousia here, referring to the beast, is mimicking or counterfeiting the return of Jesus. So the second in verse 8 is the beast's parousia. The third moment is headed for destruction. We see that in verse 11. The three moments reappear in verses 9 through 11. So here are the three moments. First moment, the number 7 symbolizes fullness. The sixth emperor is now in power. The emperor, who could be 7, does not last long, for perfection is not yet possible. And we would have said in earlier studies that the number 7 means perfection. So the second moment after Roman emperor number 7 fails, the beast becomes number 8, and he tries to surpass number 6, but he fails. The third moment is headed for destruction. The Roman Empire tries to be 7, which is completion, but does not succeed. It will always be 6. It will always be the number 6, which is lacking completion or incompleteness. The beast represents unending emptiness and frustration. After the power of the beast is analyzed in verses 8 through 11, there is an analysis of history in 3 stages. So, in these times, persons tend to be very interested in who the beast is. Note well, the beast represents unending emptiness and frustration. So there is an analysis of history in 3 stages. 1. Alliance of kings with the beast. That's in verses 12 and 13. And the second, war against the beast. The Lamb and the holy ones defeat the beast. That's in verse 14. Now, part 3. Internal war against Rome. And that's verses 15 through 17. First stage, that's verses 12 and 13. 10 horns on the beast represents 10 kings. These may be the kings in the provinces under the empire. They include kings of the whole world who are seduced by the harlot, seduced by devils who come out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And we recall seeing that in chapter 16 and verse 14, there were evil spirits coming out of the mouth of the dragon and the false prophet. These kings have not yet received a kingdom, but the beast gives them authority as kings. These kings gave their authority over to the beast. Now, the second stage of history here, which has been recalled in verse 14, the Roman Empire and the kings of the earth will fight with the Lamb. This is a repeat of the opposition between the beast of chapter 13 and the Lamb of chapter 14, verses 1 through 5. The Lamb will conquer the beast and the kings. This points towards the final war of chapter 19, verses 11 through 21, where the risen Jesus appears as King of kings and Lord of lords. The third stage, in verses 15 through 17, in verse 16, there is the description of a future internal crisis in the empire. The 10 horns and the beast will hate the harlot. Rome is hated by the entire Roman Empire, with all its local and provincial powers, and so they destroy Rome. It is not only the holy ones who stand up to the beast who are destroyed by the idolization of the empire, but this idolization also destroys the beast from within. God wills this internal crisis in the Roman Empire. So at the end of the day, evil turn around attacking itself and destroy its own self. So this is an explanation of chapter 17. Please note well that because of, to save data and the length of time we spend here, it might seem as though what I just share is packed, and in fact it is. But what I will recommend is that you replay it over and over. The recording will always be here. You play it over and over, and in your spare time, you sit down with your Bible, and you have to go verse by verse, pause the recording, read over that reference as I make reference to different verses, and then you listen it again, read it, compare it. But if you just sit down and just listen to the recording flat like that, you will be lost as lost can be. So my recommendation is that you have your Bible in your hand, and that's what Bible study is. You can't necessarily have Bible study. It's not this is recording is not a devotional. So it's not giving an exposition which you just sit down and listen to for leisure and social. But it is study. Study, so you have to have your Bible before you, interact with the verses, pause the video, read back up something you don't understand, and then you listen it again and you read again. So that's how Bible study works. So the recording is there that you can listen over and over again. May I also invite you to, I am sure some big words and terms were used, and you might have questions. So I ask, if there is any question, you can feel free to post respectful questions and comments down below, and I will endeavor to follow up in subsequent videos. I will follow up on the questions, and if there is any lack of clarity, I will try to say more in future recordings.